that compared to, hang on a second, why have you prioritised landlords?
The lack of understanding of the impact of that, with this whole, it's only 4%, it's $5,000, it doesn't mean much, just like how disconnected are you from the reality of people trying to save a deposit?
Like I say, they could have delayed the landlord tax cuts by 4 months, and that would have paid for those cancer drugs.
It's probably more a case of heard it all before. That might be age. I heard it all before, and this is the narrative that politicians don't understand.
You'd be like, this is our contract, please, honour it. When it's the government and you're the government's little brother, and they can just be like, well, just kidding.
But more share their concerns, and sometimes this is where I recognise that people did vote for this government, and they are quite confused about what they've actually got for that.
Hello there, good evening everybody. Welcome to the live show. I have two guests lined up tonight. I'll bring them in now because it's super easy. We've got Blake, where I shouldn't mute him, I should bring him onto stage. And I've got Andrew Caie, who is running for the Mayoralty and the Te Papa Ward in the Tauranga election that's on at the moment. Good evening, guys. How are you guys going?
Good as always. Thanks for having us, Paul.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
So I figured what we'd do is we'll start with you tonight, Andrew, because it's, getting fairly late. You've got only a few hours left that you're allowed to campaign, and I know what the rules can be like around those kind of things. They're very tight. And for anybody that's wondering about a podcast version of this, it will either go up tonight before midnight or tomorrow after 12, after voting closes. So if anyone wants to sort of catch up, then we can do that. But the aim, unfortunately, is not to sell you as a candidate for people to go out and vote for, because I'm guessing most of the votes have been done already. Really curious to know, though, how the campaign's been going, because it's a really unique kind of election campaign. It's been a long time since there's been voting there, and it's a long time until there'll be voting there. What's been your impression so far of the campaign itself?
The campaign itself's been really good. The people of Tauranga are really passionate. They have a lot of opinions. They've missed democracy.
I noticed.
And then they're absolutely willing to share them. So, but I don't know if that's going to translate into turnout. And that's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, it's a really important election for us. It's a longer term than normal. It's going for 4 years. It's post the commission, where there's a big debate about where we're going for the future of Tauranga. And so it's going to really have an impact beyond its election cycle. So I really hope, people continue to get involved right up until voting closes, 12 o'clock tomorrow.
Have you had a chance to see what the voter turnout's been like so far?
I've been following along pretty closely. They've been updating every day with the rolls. I haven't seen today's yet. I do know that we were kind of tracking in line, though on Thursday, the last couple of years had a really significant surge right at the end, and we haven't unfortunately seen that yet. So last I checked, we're at about 25% turnout. And typically would be about 30% turnout by now, and we finish at about 40, with the last 2 days getting quite a big chunk of people.
So today's returns numbers are 28.98% overall. So you're sitting just below that 30 mark, tracking 35.5 for the one before back in 2019, 35.2 for 2016, and 35.5 back in 2013. So it is tracking a little bit lower than what we've seen in past years. So hopefully you're right, there's that surge. It'd be great to get those numbers
Absolutely.
out there.
Considering how important it is, but that's quite a bit behind. I was hoping for a bit more of a jump, but if that's today's numbers, then I would have liked to have been in 30, but
what's been the feedback from people while you've been out there on the campaign trail? Because I don't think people realize just how much effort goes into a campaign when you're running at local body politics. You've got a bit of cost that's involved with obviously registering and any kind of marketing that you're doing. There's meetings, there's social media communications, there's basically being on call 24/7 for people to ask you all sorts of random questions. So what's been the feedback so far?
I've had a really positive reception, which has been really cool. I didn't know what to expect, and you kind of don't in local. It's not like we've got polls or metrics, so everyone kind of goes in blind and then continues blind, and all you can really do is when people on the street say, "Hey, I've heard about you or read about you already," uh, that's really a nice boost to the morale. Because otherwise, outside of that, there's no real metrics. But I've had a resoundingly good response, much more than I anticipated. So I'm hoping that translates into Saturday's result.
Have you been told what time to expect results?
Yeah, approximately 3:30
Mhm.
will be the earliest that the preliminary results come out, and then a further confirmation will be done, I believe, on Sunday, and then the final results will be done released sometime between Tuesday and Thursday next week.
It sounds like a complicated process because I suppose it's STV as well, so it's ranking. Have you come across people having trouble with that?
A lot of confusion about that. And some of the advice from even the council's video says to rank everyone, but you don't have to. So even that's not clear advice. But mostly I've been just encouraging people to rank as many candidates as they want to, and most importantly, just to have their vote cast so that they can have their voice heard.
What are the big issues facing people there?
The number one that everyone will complain about is traffic and congestion problems. But along the campaign trail, especially around the long-term plan, it's about where we're going to invest to grow Tauranga and whether we're going to invest, as some candidates would like to just keep us as we are. But then where we are is not always particularly working for everyone here. So we'll see tomorrow what the people of Tauranga decide they want their future to be.
Are there any sort of issues that surprised you?
Surprised me? No, not particularly. They're all pretty standard, pretty run of the mill for local council stuff, and obviously the big side one at the moment is the Māori ward. We have our Māori ward, and then obviously before the next election there'll be that referendum. So that's been a big discussion point, and I suppose that's going to be continuing out through this government's term.
That actually raises a really interesting question because you have a 4-year term. This government is going to push through that really unpopular referendum idea for the next round of local body elections. Does that mean that, and I don't know if you have answers for this yet, that Tauranga would have to have just a special vote at next year's local body election around the future of the wards, or is it something that will be put off until the next round after that?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I'm not sure. Yeah, because we are delayed to skip into the next cycle. I don't actually know that one because everyone along the campaign trail I just mentioned, before our next election, we'll have that referendum. But yeah, you're right. You're right. We are skipping the one, so I'm not sure.
I love to throw spanners in the works like that. It's great fun.
See if we know our stuff, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I've got to grill people. What was your motivation for running?
That's simple. Like, I just want to build a future for our people in Tauranga. Selfishly, my son and myself. Obviously, everyone else. I want everyone to flourish here. But you obviously take your experience in life and then project that on. So, I would like Tauranga to have affordable housing and good job opportunities. And I knew there was going to be a debate amongst some of the old crew, the old guard. And I wanted to put my face forward to be part of the new guard.
Has there been much feedback from voters about the old council? Because obviously the commissioners stepped in after being asked by the last mayor. It's been contentious for some people having them there. Has there been feedback? Because obviously a number of them are also running this time around. Has there been feedback from voters about, we want them back and give them another chance, or screw them, they screwed up last time, or not really a consideration for them?
By and large, that's the general feedback, is that whether they were guilty or not, they were involved, so that we generally want fresh faces. And even if that might potentially lead to a bit of inexperience, a whole bunch of first-term councillors, if they have the mesh to work together for the good of the city, well, then that's what you want from your councillors. So overall, I've heard that, they're looking for fresh faces. It'll be interesting to see if that shows up in the results.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always very curious to see how people vote, and one of the problems with low voter turnout, of course, is you get if you have a very dedicated base, you can get some really terrible people elected. We've seen that in Kirikiriroa Hamilton with Andrew Bidder. He's a member of a sovereign citizen group called the Residents and Ratepayers Association there, and yeah, he's obviously made headlines a few times.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff.
Yeah, he has some interesting outlooks on things. Have there been any sort of feedback from voters that you've come across about those sort of candidates, like a risk of any candidates getting in that probably wouldn't do very well in the role because of their views like that?
Not really, surprisingly. It's been a very clean campaign. There's some couple of things thrown out there, but by and large, no one's presented themselves that way, even if they might have a history of that or an element of that within them. So, I mean, sometimes that can be a bit disconcerting. You want people to present themselves and be honest so that the voters can honestly judge them. But on the other side, like, people have just mostly stuck to the issues and how they're going to deal with that for the future of Tauranga, which is also what a lot of people want right now, given our dysfunction. You know, they don't want your personality politics. They want you to just get the job done. So it's a bit six one way, half a dozen the other.
Yeah, fair enough. Blake, have you got any questions? Because I realise I'm completely railroading this.
No, but Sam's got a question. So he says,
all right,
what's your best and worst meet the candidate's experience, Andrew?
Oof. Best and
just
worst.
take a look at the screen and see who's asking the question, because I can tell you now, Sam is looking for a really specific answer for what was the best.
The best. A specific answer for the best. You know, these funky people came from out of town, did a show. I don't know if you heard of it, In the Ballot. That was really fun to be part of. It was well run, and the hosts were excellent. Pity that we had a question guy. He was a bit iffy, but
he was terrible. He made some joke about a drag queen, and there are a few people who got a little confused about that, because I understand that drag performances aren't necessarily something that's common in Tauranga.
No, we had ours shut down recently, unfortunately. R for Pirate really got me. And the worst one would just be the union one. I don't think I spoke well. I don't think I presented myself well at that occasion, and that's the only reason I think that's the worst one. Otherwise, I mean, they were all fun. The questions were good. The interactions with the crowd were good, and I think I overall spoke pretty well. Other than, that union meet the candidates, I just wasn't impressed with some of my answers.
So it was more of a performance thing for yourself as opposed to the way it was run or presented.
Yeah, basically. They were all mostly the same. The only standout one was the In the Ballot one. Obviously, the cameras added a little bit, and a little bit of the game show element added a little bit more fun. But the rest were just your kind of standard routine.
Okay. I have another question here for you from Heidi. She would like to know what your position is around a rainbow crossing in Tauranga Moana. And I have to admit, this is the one that kind of surprised me, looking at actually the It's in the Ballot stuff that they've done through all the candidate meetings and the ward meetings. It's a really odd mix of people who are like, no, just plain no. And then a bunch of people are like, I'm open to it. But there didn't seem to be any kind of rhyme or reason behind why people were for or against it beyond traffic management and how much it would cost.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm all for it. I think part of the council is to be representatives for their city. And if they can't personally show the diversity of their city, then they can do events or installations that help promote that kind of diversity. And so absolutely, I'd be in favor. And plus, I mean, the color, it's wicked. It's bright and vibrant, and it just adds some sparkle to the city. So I'm all for it. And some of the answers are just like, no for traffic reasons. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be a crossing. Maybe just move it down the road slightly. But yeah, I think, we're all happy for the Matariki celebrations and absolutely in support of that, and a whole bunch of other celebrations. But there are some communities that we seem to be more willing to gloss over at the moment. And so I think an art installation would be a good way for them to be included, especially with some of the more heinous actions that have happened in Tauranga in the last few years.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I was driving around there, when I was down there for the meeting, the main street of Tauranga itself has pedestrian crossings everywhere. And then when you go down by the waterfront in the Mount, pedestrian crossings everywhere. Just, you got plenty of options there for actually just painting one some pretty colors.
Did we lose me? Oops.
Well, you're frozen, but we can still hear you.
Oh, good. Whoops, sorry, you can still hear me. I thought I was lost completely. Sorry, what was your question again?
Oh, well, I was just saying that going down the waterfront in the Mount, and then driving down the main street in Tauranga itself, so many pedestrian crossings there already. They pick one, pick one and paint it rainbow colors. And it's not that much.
Yes, we do. And we do need some more attraction to it's one of the big complaints at the moment, that there's not a lot of reason to be at our CBD. So it would help increase reasons to go there, check out there are some other art walks and art installations. So, add it to the graffiti walk or the other street art that we have.
One of the things that you're missing there is a museum. Is there a reason for that? Like, why is the city itself never really gotten behind it? And like the nasty instinct of my juvenile brain is because everybody's hoarding their stuff and they haven't died yet. But there must be some reason for no actual museum there.
Just a lack of foresight in actually building it.
Okay.
That's it. People weren't. One of the biggest problems with Tauranga's history is we were a lovely beachside town, and a lot of the residents here wanted us to stay that way. But the problem is when people keep moving to a lovely beachside town, your beachside town turns into a beachside city. But the people just never accepted that. And that was ultimately the reason we got the commissioners, because they couldn't grow into a city and do city things and build city amenities like a museum and other things. The only thing we have in Tauranga are pools.
Which seems really weird because you've got, great big ocean right there. People can swim in that.
Yes, and we're world renowned for our lovely beaches. So
I don't think people realize either.
And no other amenities.
Oh, it looks like we might have lost Andrew. His device is disconnected. Let's see if we can bring him back. Right, can you hear me, Andrew?
I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Fantastic.
What's wrong with my camera?
I don't know. We could just blame it on the big Microsoft issue that's hitting the world at the moment.
Yeah. It's always easy to blame the big man.
Yeah, Microsoft has got broad shoulders. It can be blamed for everything. It's definitely all their fault. That's why I use Apple. Not such a problem then.
At least I'm frozen looking in your direction.
Yeah, it's a lovely freeze frame. It's great. It worked really well. Hey, I have had a little bit of an issue with one of the candidates that's been running there, which I think a few locals have noticed, judging by the numbers and the complaints that I've been getting. Has there been much, other than myself, outside influence that you think is shaping the way that people are perceiving things in this election?
The big one is the cocktail party that occurred just before. It was a fancy cocktail party involving, I believe, one of the candidates and one of our notorious lobby groups and the council. That's been kind of the only outside influence. Who went to that? Who paid for it? Who was on the guest list? Quite the story rumbling along. But beyond that, and you guys kicking up a bit of a ruckus, we've really been left to our lonesome, and even just trying to find ourselves in like the national news discourse. We're not particularly well covered there either. So I don't know if that's just local democracy and no one particularly cares about it, or.
Well,
Yeah.
Because there are some high-profile people running. You've got some high-profile locals in sort of neighbouring districts on councils. I would have thought they would have been that would have drawn in a bit more media attention than it got.
Yes. And some of our high-profile candidates, would have got a few more, got the buzz going a bit more, got the hype up a bit more. And again, especially just everyone complaining about us losing democracy, and even democracy being a bit of a national issue at the moment, with our recent lockdowns and so on and so forth. That was discussed at the last election. So I just would have thought there would have been more getting people involved, and more turnout. I believe the council was hoping for 50%, and so the fact that we're going to be trending lower than previous years is kind of like, oh, wow, how do we get people more involved in local democracy?
Yeah. I have another question for you from Sam. He'd like to know how the Q&A interview went.
The Q&A interview?
Yeah, the interview with Q&A.
You were on Q&A a few weeks ago.
See, it's been a whirlwind already.
Yes, TVNZ in the morning. Yes. Q&A on Sunday. Yes, sorry, I was with that. It was really good. She was really lovely to talk to. It was my first time with kind of proper traditional news media. And so seeing how that all went behind the scenes was really kind of enjoyable. But the interview itself was great. And not as much, obviously, as what we interviewed about made it through to the final clip. I think I only had a brief appearance in that article. But the interview itself was really fun, and about 20 or 30 minutes worth of time for what boiled down to barely a minute of a soundbite.
Do you think it did justice for everybody that was running?
No, but news media never will. A lot of people got a lot more airtime, a lot more about them were discussed. But that's just the nature of the game. They have to make sure that they present what they think is going to get more interest themselves. And that's inherently not going to be particularly fair all the time.
That must be frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. But learnt that from the national game as well. Like I did try to bring attention to top in 2020, never any intention of getting anywhere myself. But even that was difficult because they would invite us to the debates because we weren't already in Parliament. And it just that feedback loop of, well, how do you get attention if you can't get attention because you're not already getting attention?
I can give you some tips. You could take an old Facebook page that was set up for something else with thousands of followers, change it to be just your campaign Facebook page, go out and make a whole bunch of really out there claims, including racist, homophobic stuff, and maybe try kidnapping somebody. Sure, that will get some attention.
But I have to go back through the history and tie it up, though?
If you want, yeah, absolutely you can. But if you keep those videos
just
up,
own it?
Yeah, you could, but some people aren't very good at that. You could also make sure that people aren't aware of the fact that you've got links to organizations like New Zealand Loyal. If you had those links, not that you do, other candidates might, but you don't.
No one in particular, of course.
No. Why would anybody have links to something like that? That just sounds absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Oh, shit, that's right. Susie has links to New Zealand Loyal and couldn't make it up to the potluck dinner for a fundraiser for Liz Gunn because she was busy doing a campaign. Shit, who would have seen that coming? Anyway, any sort of final thoughts on the campaign itself and how it's all rolling and what you're hoping for tomorrow?
Oh, it's been an absolute blast, honestly. I find it an absolute joy getting out and talking to people about their hopes for the future, trying to get them engaged, even if they're not. Just everyone will tell you that they are prepared to vote or they're about to vote. I went around, we've got an average of 40% turnout, and I went around and asked people, do you vote? And everyone told me yes. So I'm pretty sure I met every voter by the statistics. All people are telling me some stories. But all the same, they will still tell you their hopes, their dreams of what they want Tauranga to be, what they think the problems are. And that's really fun to be involved in.
Is there sort of a long-term goal for people? Like, do they see a vision 10 years down the track, 20 years down the track for the city?
Some people do.
Okay.
Some people are more concerned about shorter-term problems.
Like car parks down the main street.
Yes, and that returning the car parks will save what killed it.
Right. Okay. I'll take their word for it. I mean, the
If
research doesn't show that, but I'll take their word for it.
if you do not,
They're
if you
convinced,
do,
at least.
sorry,
No, my
if
bad.
you do, if you don't win, Andrew, will you run again in 4 years?
Yeah, it's definitely a long-held dream of mine to be involved in public service. So I'd certainly like to give it another shot, but I suppose it also depends on the results tomorrow. Like I put a lot of effort in. I've met a lot of people. I think I've got some resonance. So if that turns out that I'm bottom of the list, well then maybe I have to take a hint that potentially I don't.
And would you consider trying for a general election somewhere?
Certainly. Again, I would like to enter public service. I'm not particularly fussed on how. I'm not particularly ego-driven. It doesn't have to be about me. I would just like to make that contribution. I suppose that is about me. But I think I could have a more of an impact locally. So I'd certainly like to start there and finish my time there. So if I did happen to be successful, I wouldn't be tapping out and causing a by-election to join the central gangs. But who knows what the future holds?
As Sam's pointed out, you could always run for the Bay of Plenty Regional Council in 2025. Andrew von Dazelden, I'm sure would enjoy the retirement if somebody was to replace him. Just saying.
I'll keep my eyes around the country and see what's available. No, but I do think you're going to have to be where from you want to represent. That's not a dig at anyone. That's just a personal belief I have. If you're going to represent a city, a place, a region, then you should be embedded in that.
Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It is really appreciated. Good luck tomorrow. Do you have any plans for the day itself?
No real plans. Just make it up to my family. It's mostly a family day until the results come in. If I'm successful, then I'm going to be busy, so I'd like to enjoy a bit of time with my family. And if I'm unsuccessful, well then they'll console me a little bit.
Tim McIndoe, who was the former Hamilton West MP for the National Party, used to tell me that election day was the day that the garden got the best ever care any time over 3 years. Like, he would spend all day out there, be edging and weeding by hand and making sure everything was perfect. So it would last for the next 3 years, no matter what the outcome was.
Hey, that's excellent thinking. And hey, something's got to get you through the day. It's going to be a long tick until the early results are released, but I suppose it always is.
Yeah. Good luck tomorrow. Hopefully we catch up fairly soon again and see how it all rolled out.
Cheers, Paul and Blake. Thank you both very much for having me on.
You're very welcome. Have a good one.
Our pleasure. All right. So, Andrew Caie, running for council in Tauranga. There's lots going on. If you live in Tauranga or you know somebody who lives in Tauranga, encourage them to get out and vote. Statistically, they haven't yet. So make sure that you encourage them as best you can. There's a whole bunch of information around the different candidates that are out there, what they're standing for. And there are a lot of candidates running, and a lot of people are having trouble trying to decipher what's going to be best for them, who's going to be the best person to represent them. So definitely do some research. If you check out the It's in the Ballot YouTube page, then you'll be able to see a whole bunch of work that they've done with candidates. That's all online for people to be able to access. There's also things like the websites and Facebook pages, as well as a whole bunch of videos that Tauranga City Council have actually done themselves, introducing candidates and sort of doing a bit of a get to know you. There's a whole bunch of resources out there. Please encourage people to get out there and vote by lunchtime tomorrow. And if you check out the Tauranga City Council website, there's voting places available where you can go and do your drop off for your vote. So definitely get out there and get voting. So brilliant. What do you think of that one there, Blake? You enjoy that one?
Good. He's a nice guy. Yeah.
Lovely guy. Absolutely. So I'm very, very hopeful that we see some good results tomorrow.
Just a quick what's the word I'm looking for? To be truthful, Andrew has already committed to the reverse reductions campaign. So we might be seeing him somewhere in there. So look out for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, is everybody ready to find out where I've been
Yeah.
in more
Yeah.
detail?
So you spent a bit of time in hospital. I actually want to preface this with something else first.
Sorry.
When I told people that we were going to be doing this, there was a whole bunch of comments that came into people from about their experiences in the healthcare system. And we were told really specifically that frontline services are not going to be impacted from the budget cuts that the government's putting in to pay for their landlord tax cuts. So I'm really curious to know about any sort of impact that you might have come across, but I want to show you a couple of the stories as well from other people that have come through to me, just to get your opinion on them. Some of them are really tough. All right, so just a bit of a warning for people out there. They're not going to be the easiest things to sit down and read. And I will also apologize because I think it's going to cover you on your side of the screen, Blake. So
Yeah.
I don't want.
And I will
It's not on
pre-warn. And I will pre-warn people that viewer discretion is also advised for my story as well.
Okay.
Some of the details are quite sad.
Yeah. So we'll get to that, but people should be well aware. So this was the first story that came through from somebody about an elderly mother in Middlemore. Last week, she went to visit her and found her unconscious. When she managed to get the attention of the nurse told her that according to the chart, she hadn't had anything to drink for over 24 hours.
Oh,
The nurse.
oh, good.
The nurses had alerted the duty doctor hours and hours before, and he hadn't been to see her or order an IV. The friend did a good job of Karening. I love the use of that term, and ended up getting the director of the unit down to her mother's room. And within 10 minutes of that, a doctor appeared to provide a consult of why unconscious, dehydration, and started her on IV fluids. If her friend wasn't able to get to the hospital, how long would it have gone on for? And if she died of dehydration, given that she was elderly with dementia, would they even have looked twice at the cause of death? As it stands, since that episode, she's not really recovered and is now in the end stage of palliative care. So that one came through when we made the announcement.
Not good.
Quite clearly very upset, very upsetting. The other one that I had come through was this one. Now, this is also from somebody else who has a disability. And so their communication methods are a little bit less straightforward than just being able to call out. He said, firstly, I was screaming in pain and the idiot doctors thought I made that sound naturally. Clueless. Also, I wanted to communicate, but they wouldn't let me use my communication tray. Those are the two big things. They were doing such a bad job at paying attention. I literally had to pull my oxygen out just to ping them. So, some really harrowing stories there. I'm wondering whether or not you can sort of comment on what you came across. Did you have any of those sort of issues?
So, just a few clarifications. So, what I'm about to talk about doesn't affect the nurses in my case. They were amazing, couldn't be more helpful. What I'm going to focus on is more the doctors and how they can be more caring to people with disabilities. Now, this all started the day after the petition delivery. I started going downhill and I just thought it was my asthma on the Thursday night. Then when we got to the Motoriki long weekend the next day, my breathing got to a point where I couldn't breathe and we had to call Healthline and then subsequently the ambulance. And then by the time we got to the hospital, the infection had spread, started vomiting, etc., and got admitted to a medical ward a few hours later. Once I had IV fluids and etc. Now, this was one of two times, which I'll get to shortly. So the first time I was on a medical ward, and this is where the issue started. Now, the nurses were great apart from one thing. Every nurse that came on shift, because there's 3 shifts, 7 till 3, 3 till 7, or 7 till 11, or whatever it is these days. So every nurse that came on, we would have to explain to them that I couldn't have Panadol because, partially because of my disability and because of my, with the swallowing, and because of my neurodiverse issues with my autism to do with tactile stuff, I can't have Panadol. So we would have to explain this to the nurses every shift. So it eventually got to the point where they put it down on a note, but it took several. I'll be stopping to look at the comments. It'll be several times before I had to do this. Now, the other issue that we had during this first visit from the doctor, was that they put me on a ward where they couldn't do IV. So they had to use something called a PICC line. And they worked out that the PICC line wasn't suitable because they put it under the skin. It was very painful to get injected. Now, that was the first issue of many that we would have, but the only issue on the first round. So the second round is where we started to get the most. So yes, had the picket line taken out after I complained it was too painful. Now, just for transparency, as I can't push the button like that other person that we showed on this stream, somebody from my family, whether that be my nana or my mother, is with me at all times, whether that be a night shift or a day shift, because I cannot push a button. I cannot push a call button, and they cannot provide around the clock. They can do watches, but only a few hours at a time. So they can't provide 24/7 service. So therefore, if my family or family member or whoever has to come and sit with me at all times, apart from going out to go to the bathroom, of course, or grabbing a cup of tea. So yeah. Do you have any questions on that first part, Paul, before we go?
Well, I'm kind of curious as to why it wasn't on your charts about the Panadol.
So this is a constant fight that we've had for many hospital visits over many years. So just, and I apologise for anybody squeamish. So just for context, the only medication I can take orally is either crushed medication in like yogurt or something, and the only other way I can take medication orally is, funny enough, ibuprofen. But every other medication, unless it is crushed in yogurt or something to that nature, if I take it, I just bring it back up again because the gagging reflex won't stop. And I can't control that at all, unfortunately. So, yes, this has been a constant battle over many, many years where, every shift it only sorts itself if I'm in for a few days at a time. Every shift, we would have to tell the nurse, no, I can't have Panadol, only ibuprofen. And it's a constant cycle. And yeah. But apart from that, the nurses were great. So I'll cut a bit out now so we're not here too long. Went home for a few days, then started vomiting again. And by this time, I got home the Sunday and was back within a few days. So this is the Sunday of Matariki weekend. And they found the second time we were there for a lot longer. We were in the emergency until from 8 p.m. at night till 4 a.m. the next morning before we were provided, this time on the orthopedic ward. And they were amazing. Couldn't fault them, the nurses. But unfortunately, that's where we started to hit problems within the second visit. Now, I will preface that this next part is quite sensitive, so if you don't want to listen, I understand. So they found a blockage in my bowel and intestine. So they were discussing whether to have an operation or whether to do it manually. They decided to do it manually, but the kicker to this was that we eventually had no choice but to have it. We had to have it in the end, but we were trying to explain to the doctors days and days before this that they needed to find another way to not have to do suppositories or inhibitors because of the spasms in my bottom region. Now, when I was younger, we could just pop them up willy-nilly because the progression of the disability hadn't progressed. Now, I'm older now. I'm 25, and as you can imagine, the disability had progressed. So I'm now at a point where I'm not able to do that easily. And I was telling them, they wouldn't listen, and it got to a point where I needed to have one. So I had the first one at 2 a.m. on, I think it was a Wednesday or maybe the Tuesday or the Wednesday. It's all a blur to me. One of the days I had to have an enema at 2 a.m. in the morning. Once I started vomiting, and the blockage were getting worse and worse. And this time I'd also had CT scans where they found heaps of bruising and stuff, which I'm still healing from. And I just found out the other day that I'll be bedbound for another 2 to 4 weeks while that heals, but it will take around, they suspect around 8 to 12 to heal in total. So, give or take. They can't really give a good thing because it's all estimates. So, yeah. Fighting. Got nowhere. They had to do what they asked. And it shouldn't get to that point. But we can talk about that in a second. So, yes. I had the laxatives, had the treatment, brought the bowel down, and had to come home. Now, I'm still suffering from the after effects, and I will be for some time while the bowel heals, but they managed to get me to a point where I'm at home, and and another piece of transparency, because when Sam and Paul and others that are close to me have become closer to the family recently, they were fully informed anytime I went in, and they were kept up to date by my family, hence why we were able to give little updates on the videos.
Well, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're glad that you're on the mend. In terms of your mum and your grandmother helping you out, obviously it's a lot of pressure on them. They've got other things that they need to do as well, and other people that they need to care for. the kind of pressure that they're put under, is there any help there or any support from the hospital or from the government for people who are helping like they are?
No, it's just a thing that you do for family, really. Yeah, don't know help apart from, like a lazy boy bed or whatever. But that's sort of where it goes.
How are they holding up with everything?
Family's doing okay.
Cool.
We had to explain it in a way to my brother and sister who are also on the spectrum in a way that they would understand. So that was extremely difficult to try and say to them, my sister's easier because she can understand a lot more. So we just told her that I had to go in an ambulance and that was it. And we couldn't really tell my brother because he is cognitively impaired. So yeah. Yeah, it was really hard in that respect. And for mums, as you know, personally, you'll know, having to juggle the three of us, as she's explained to you off camera before, can be quite difficult. So I guess you can imagine how it was during this time. It was very hard. She was lucky that we had other family members that were able to step in and take them, but some families don't have this luxury. So it needs to be better suited for people with disabilities. Okay, the bit where you need a family member or whatever, that's never going to change, but at least make it easier so they can find alternative treatments and listen to you so you don't have to have the most painful ones. So that's what was hardest for me. Having to fight, and then having to end up having the most painful one anyway.
With the cutbacks that we know the Ministry of Health and Whaikaha have had from the government, did you come across anything that you thought was a direct impact of that during this process?
Not really. The main pain was trying to get the older doctors to listen. The younger ones around my age were okay, but the older style ones were not so great to deal with. And again, for anyone just coming in, I'm not talking about the nurses, I'm talking about the doctors. So the older doctors, the younger ones were all right because they come from that newer generation, but the doctors that were trained in the older style needed a bit more understanding, and there were a couple of occasions where we had quite heated discussions from the bed. I'll let you read any comments that need to come up.
Well, we've had this one come in from Special Caie saying that she says you're very brave. Similar for her sister-in-law who has Rett and had to go to Napier Hospital. Mother-in-law explained that there's never enough staff, can only do the bare minimum. She was absolutely exhausted. It must absolutely be exhausting for everybody involved.
Yeah. So that's my story, and at the request of my family, we will be adding an element of this to the campaign now because of what I've been through. When I am back on my feet in the months to come, wherever that may be, for people asking about the campaign itself, it's still ongoing in the background. I want to be a bit selfish here and give a bit of a shout out to the Labour team because they have been nothing but helpful during this time. I won't name who, but members of the caucus reached out to my family and Paul or my family personally and asked if there's anything they could do to help. We had people from our local council and candidates that are running for the upcoming council reach out. So that was really, really cool. And I just want to say thank you for that. And we all really appreciate that.
I think I speak for everyone when I say we're really glad that you're on the mend. And I think it's really, really helpful to hear these stories. There's some horror stories out there at the moment from people about what's going on. And I think we all just want a working system that's effective for everybody and that everybody can be seen in an orderly time. I mean, 8 hours in the ED that's crazy. That's not easy for anybody.
Yeah. Something needs to change, and once I'm back on my feet and not going guts all out with and able to get up again, I will definitely be doing something about it, along with everything.
Just, juggling time. That's the hard part now.
Yeah. And not to mention it's really stressful because we've got a transport campaign to do after this one. So trying to fit everything in before the next term, this term ends, because we don't know when it's going to end because it could end early. So, yeah.
Who knows at this rate? Oh, excuse me. I've been fighting this cough all afternoon for the last 3 weeks. It's ridiculous. I think that is a really good place for us to wrap everything up. Keep it under an hour. Go see whether or not things like FPOS and Microsoft are working again, because obviously those have been hit pretty hard tonight.
Any final comment from anyone before we go? I can see one at the bottom here.
So there's been a couple come in. We've actually got one here from Nick Ruani. Blake, I want to put you with Dr. Aisha Viral, so you can tell your story and make things better. Nick's lovely. I was really impressed with him when we met him down in Wellington. Really nice guy. So really glad to see him down there and getting involved. And I think Dr. Viral is a very good person for you to chat to.
I'll be in touch about that, Nick.
Josie points out that her 19-year-old son, who's on the autism spectrum, has come downstairs to talk about his superheroes. Totally understand it. I would be much the same. And who doesn't love superhero conversation? I'm really looking forward to the new Deadpool movie. Very excited about that. And we've got Special Caie here finishing off with You're a Demon, Blake. Thank you both. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, Blake, and to Andrew as well for joining us earlier, sharing your stories. And again, if you're in Tauranga, you have until lunchtime tomorrow to get out there and vote. I will be putting something out on Sunday about the results and possibly going over what defamation and the Digital Communication Harms Act actually says, because there's some really interesting stuff in there that seems to be getting misconstrued by at least 2 candidates for this year's election.
And we will probably see you next month sometime.
Yeah, we'll work on the next one for August and go from there. Until then, guys, have yourself a fantastic night. Hopefully everything is back up and running technology-wise for everybody. And yeah, I guess enjoy. Good luck to everybody running in the campaign tomorrow, and fingers crossed you're not twiddling your thumbs for too long.
Have a good weekend,
have a great
everyone. Night. Bye.
Bye.